Today we're going to talk about Biosphere. In this presentation, we're going to learn how to identify trees and other plants. The first step in identifying what kind of plant you have is to identify the plant type. There are 5 different types of plants. The first one is a woody plant. Woody plants are plants that have a woody stem and bark. They include trees, shrubs, and some viney plants. Another type is a grass-like plant. These ones have narrow leaves that enclose or surround the stem. The third type is ferns. These reproduce with spores. Then you have all the other flowering non-woody plants. This would be like your roses and daffodils and all sorts of other flowering plants. The last type you have is lichens. Lichens are a life form that's comprised of algae and fungus and lives symbiotically, typically on rocks and trees. When talking about woody plants, you're typically identifying the difference between a tree and a shrub. The difference is a tree has a central stem or trunk at the base. It generally exceeds 4 meters if allowed to mature. A shrub is a woody plant with several stems growing from the base and does not typically exceed 4 meters in height. When identifying trees, the first thing you need to determine is the type of tree you have. There are 2 types of trees. There are conifers and there are deciduous trees. Conifers are otherwise known as evergreens. These are like your Christmas trees. Their leaves are typically needle or scale-like, and they're trees that typically do not shed their needles in the autumn. Deciduous trees are the trees that change color in the fall. Their leaves are flat and thin, and they typically shed in the autumn. Looking at conifers, the next thing you want to look at is the leaf form and shape. So the first thing to determine is if the leaves are scale-like or if the leaves are needle-like. So the top picture on the right-hand side depicts leaves that are scale-like, but on the bottom, the ones that are needle-like. Once you have determined that, you have to figure out if the leaves are flattened, which means they cannot be rolled between your fingers, or if they're rounded, which means they can be rolled between your fingers. When you're talking about conifers, you also have to look at the leaf arrangement. There are 3 different ways that the leaves can be arranged on a conifer tree. The first way is leaf needles line up individually along the twig at a node. This can be seen in the bottom left-hand corner. The second way is the leaf needles are in clusters, such as the picture in the middle. All of these needles are then bundled at a central point. In coniferous leaves, they can be 1, 2, or 5 leaves at each node, depending on the tree type. We're going to move into deciduous trees. Deciduous trees are leaves that fall off in the autumn. So there are 2 leaf types for the deciduous tree. The first is a simple leaf. A simple leaf is a single leaf blade with the bud at the base of the stem. A compound leaf is the other leaf type, in which a leaf with more than 1 blade, or leaflets, all the blades are then attached to a single leaf on the stem. The way to tell the difference is to follow the stem back to the woody part of the tree. If it only has 1 leaf, and then you hit the woody stem, then you have a simple leaf. If you have multiple leaflets on a vine, and then that vine hits the woody stem, then you have a compound leaf. Once you've determined if you have a simple or compound leaf, the next thing you need to look at with a deciduous tree is the leaf arrangement. There are 2 different leaf arrangements for deciduous trees. The leaves can either grow directly across from each other on the same twig, which is known as opposite, or they can grow in a staggered form, not directly across from one another, which is known as alternate. There are many different leaf shapes with deciduous trees. Below is an example of all the different types. Don't spend a lot of time memorizing the different types. There are actually many more types in your manual on page 196. The next characteristic for deciduous trees we're going to talk about is the leaf edge. There are 3 different leaf edges that leaves can have. The first one is a lobed edge. This is where the blade has projections that shape the leaf. A typical example would be an oak tree. Another leaf edge would be a smooth edge, in which the leaf blade has no lobes or teeth. The last type is a toothed or serrated edge. This edge of the leaf blade has teeth. It almost looks like the edges of a saw. There are some other characteristics that will help you identify your deciduous tree. The first thing is the vein, blade, or lobe shape. One way is palmate. This is when the blade, lobes, or veins are arranged like fingers on a palm of a hand. Pinnate means that the blade, lobes, and veins are arranged like the veins of a feather. You can see both of these over on the left. The last characteristic is leaf base symmetry. So you look at the bottom of the base, right where it attaches to the stem, and you look to see if the base is symmetrical or not symmetrical. There are a few other characteristics to keep in mind when identifying your deciduous tree. What is the bark texture and color? Is the bark smooth, blocky, curling? Is it dark brown or gray? What is the leaf sinus shape? So what is the shape of the area between the lobes? What is the leaf lobe shape? And then are there fruit or cones present? We'll look more into these other characteristics when we begin identifying different deciduous trees. When you're identifying non-woody plants, so flowers, you use similar characteristics to trees and shrubs to help identify. So you look at things like, is the leaf simple or compound? Are the leaves arranged alternate or opposite? What is the leaf shape? What is the leaf edge type? And you use the flowers or fruit to help identify if they're present. You also record the number of petals and the color. The other thing you will be identifying is lichens. Lichens are a symbiotic relationship between algae and fungus that typically grow on trees, rocks, and other flat surfaces. So there are 3 different types of lichens. The most common is a crustaceous lichen. It's flush with the surface and it's flaky and flat. It tends to grow very slowly at 1 millimeter per year. The second type of lichen is foliose. Foliose is leaf-like and can be easily detached from whatever it is growing on. This lichen grows as fast as 1 centimeter per year. The third type of lichen is the fructiose lichen. This one is branch-like and bushy in appearance and is the least common. Okay, so what's next? Make sure your notes are complete and don't forget to make sketches of the terms. Also complete the whisk form below the video. I will see you guys tomorrow in class.